Have you ever had a roommate or a tenant from hell? I'm talking about the kind of person who makes you question your own sanity, who makes you wonder if you're secretly on a hidden camera show. Well, IVA got a story for you today that will make your worst roommate experience look like a walk in the park. This isn't just a story about dirty dishes or loud music. This is a story about a stolen pot of soup, a bizarre standoff, and a level of audacity that is truly off the charts. So grab your popcorn, get comfortable, and let's dive into the crazy tale of the tenant who stole her landlord's soup. It all started when a landlord, let's call her Sarah, decided to rent out a room in her house. Sarah was a kind, reasonable person, just trying to make ends meet. She put up an ad, did some interviews, and finally settled on a tenant who seemed normal enough at first. Let's call this tenant Brenda. Brenda was quiet, paid her rent on time for the first month, and mostly kept to herself. Sarah thought she'd hit the jackpot. A perfect, no-drama tenant. Oh, how wrong she was. The first few weeks were deceptively calm, but then, little things started to happen. Food would go missing from the fridge. Not a lot, just a slice of cheese here, a splash of milk there. Sarah would notice, but she'd brush it off. Maybe she just forgot she ate it. Or maybe Brenda was just a little hungry and forgot to ask. Sarah didn't want to create conflict over something so small. She was a non-confrontational person, and she figured it wasn't worth the hassle. But the small things started to escalate. Sarah's favorite mug, a gift from her late grandmother, disappeared. When she politely asked Brenda if she'd seen it, Brenda just stared at her blankly and said, "Nope, never seen it." A week later, Sarah found the mug in the back of Brenda's cupboard, stained with coffee. When Sarah confronted her again, Brenda claimed it was a similar-looking mug she'd bought herself. It was gaslighting 101, and Sarah started to feel like she was losing her mind. The passive-aggressive behavior got worse. Brenda would leave piles of dishes in the sink for days, knowing it was Sarah's biggest pet peeve. She'd blast music late at night, right when Sarah had to get up early for work. Each time Sarah tried to talk to her about the house rules they'd agreed on, Brenda would either deny everything or flip it around to make it seem like Sarah was the one being unreasonable. It was exhausting. Sarah was walking on eggshells in her own home. She dreaded coming back from work, knowing she'd have to deal with whatever new passive-aggressive game Brenda was playing. But Sarah still tried to be the bigger person. One chilly autumn evening, she decided to make a huge pot of her famous chicken noodle soup. This wasn't just any soup. This was her comfort food, a recipe passed down through her family. It took hours to make, simmering on the stove, filling the entire house with a warm, delicious aroma. She was looking forward to it all day. She imagined a cozy evening, curled up on the couch with a big bowl of soup and a good movie. It was the little bit of comfort she desperately needed after weeks of stress. She finished the soup, tasted it, perfect. She left the pot on the stove to cool down for a bit while she went to take a quick shower. She was only gone for maybe 15-20 minutes. When she came back to the kitchen, wrapped in a towel and ready to finally enjoy her meal, she stopped dead in her tracks. The kitchen was empty, and the pot of soup, was gone. Not a bowl of soup. The entire massive 8-quart pot of freshly made chicken noodle soup had vanished. Sarah's first thought was that she was going crazy. Did she dream making the soup? She could still smell it in the air. She checked the cupboards, the fridge, even the oven, thinking maybe she'd moved it and forgotten. But no, it was gone. There was only one other person in the house. Brenda. Sarah's heart started pounding. This was a whole new level of weird. It wasn't just a slice of cheese anymore. This was a declaration of war, a soup war. She knocked on Brenda's bedroom door. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. "Brenda, I know you're in there. Did you see my pot of soup?" Silence. Then, a faint shuffling sound from inside the room. Sarah's patience, which had been worn thinner than a thread, finally snapped. "Brenda, I'm not kidding. Where is my soup? I just made it. The entire pot is gone." Still, only silence from behind the door. Sarah was now a mix of furious and utterly baffled. Who steals a whole pot of soup? What do you even do with it? Sarah could hear a faint scraping sound from inside the room, like a spoon against metal. Brenda was in there, eating her soup. The audacity was breathtaking. Sarah started getting angry. This was her house, her soup. She yelled through the door, "Brenda, open this door right now. This is ridiculous. You can't just steal my things and lock yourself in your room." Nothing. It was like talking to a brick wall. A brick wall that was apparently enjoying a delicious chicken noodle dinner. Frustrated and at her wit's end, Sarah didn't know what to do. Should she call the police? What would she even say? "Hello? ¿911? My tenant stole my soup." It sounded insane. She felt insane. She sat on the floor in the hallway outside Brenda's door, completely defeated. For about an hour, she just sat there, listening to the occasional clink of a spoon, smelling the ghost of her stolen dinner. It was one of the most surreal moments of her life. Finally, the doorknob turned. The door creaked open just a crack, and Brenda peeked out. She looked at Sarah, who was still sitting on the floor, and said, with a completely straight face, "What's your problem? Why are you being so loud?" Sarah was speechless. She just pointed a shaky finger towards the room and stammered, My soup. Where is my pot of soup? Brenda's eyes widened in fake surprise. Soup? What soup? I haven't seen any soup. It was at that exact moment that Sarah noticed a telltale noodle stuck to Brenda's sweater. A single, solitary, incriminating noodle. Sarah stood up. She wasn't angry anymore. She had reached a state of calm that was almost scary. She looked Brenda dead in the eye and said, "There's a noodle on your sweater." Brenda. Brenda's face went through a whole range of emotions. Shock, denial, and finally, a flicker of panic. She looked down, saw the noodle, and her facade crumbled. She tried to brush it off, stammering, "Oh, this is from a soup I made yesterday." Sarah just stared at her. The silence was deafening. There was no soup from yesterday. They both knew it. "I want you out," Sarah said, her voice low and firm. "Your 30 days notice starts now. In fact, it starts tonight. I will be serving you with a formal eviction notice tomorrow. Now, give me back my pot." Brenda, defeated, finally relented. She shuffled back into her room and emerged a moment later with the pot. It was nearly empty. There was maybe one bowl's worth of soup left at the bottom. And to add insult to injury, the pot was scratched up from whatever furious scraping Brenda had been doing. Brenda just handed her the pot, didn't say a word, and shut the door. Sarah was left standing in the hallway, holding her nearly empty, damaged pot, a testament to the strangest tenant experience imaginable. The next 30 days were the most awkward and tense of her life, but Brenda, knowing she'd been caught and was being evicted, was surprisingly subdued. She packed her things and left without another incident. After Brenda was gone, Sarah found her missing grandma's mug, along with several of her other missing items, tucked away in a box Brenda had accidentally forgotten. She cleaned the room, changed the locks, and for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe in her own home. The story of the great soup heist became a legendary tale she told her friends, a story that always ended with laughter, even though at the time, it was anything but funny. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, the craziest situations make for the best stories later on. And also, to maybe install a lock on your kitchen if you have a roommate. So what do you think? Have you ever had a roommate or tenant this bizarre? Let me know your own horror stories in the comments below. I'd love to read them and know that Sarah and I aren't alone in this. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. See you next time.